Okay, so our research into leadership blind spots found that there is no correlation between how many blind spots someone has and how effective they are. The question then is, what is the connection between blind spots and leadership effectiveness, right? So what our research found was that everyone has blind spots pretty much, right? Even those leaders who are really effective, are getting things done, are going to have blind spots. And this is why 360 feedback is so important, right? It's about raising self-awareness about how someone is being perceived or experienced by others. It's also important to know that not all blind spots are created equal. And so when someone's receiving their feedback, which blind spots are important is going to depend on two things: what a leader's goals are, right? What they're trying to achieve, and whether those blind spots get in the way, and then the direction of the blind spot, right? So, for example, empathy is the most important behavior for conveying inclusive leadership, right? For being an inclusive leader. Delegation is not. So, if I'm working with a leader who wants to be more inclusive and they have a blind spot in empathy, and it happens to be in the disadvantageous direction, right, where they think they're more empathetic than what people are seeing, then I mean, they're going to want to work on that, right? If the directionality is different, maybe not, right? Maybe they don't want to spend some, and developmental time on something that's not really going to affect them or help them, achieve that effectiveness goal. The other thing too is if they're blind spots in delegation, which is unrelated to inclusive leadership, then again, not that important, right? So, what's your take on this, Drew?
Yeah, so good, Maria, in terms of what you're talking about. So I think, as I'm listening to you talk about this, essentially what you're saying is that this is a really complex question without just a
Mhm.
simple answer. It's not just a simple, oh, what's the correlation between blind spots and effectiveness? It's
Mhm.
way more complicated than that. Because the research that you conducted literally just looked at number of blind spots and is that correlated to effectiveness. It didn't look at directionality. It didn't look at, is this blind spot more serious or less serious, depending on
Mhm.
terms of how people are seeing you. So if you got more specific about it, potentially the answers would be a little bit different. But I
Mhm.
think based upon what you said, you just this understanding that the question is really
Mhm.
complex with a lot of variables. I think the other couple of other things just to keep in mind for me is just how tricky performance measures are, right? They are not
Mhm.
perfect by any stretch of the imagination. You also have to remember that performance measures are a perception of the
Mhm.
person's performance, right? The observers are the people that a person would work with. They don't hold the
Mhm.
truth on whether or not a person is
Mhm.
great at this or not great at this, and I think that's important to remember. And then I think the other and the final thing I would say here is just how important self-awareness is, right? I think if you went and asked somebody or said, well, research says that, there's the connection between number of blind spots and performance, it doesn't really seem like there's a strong correlation, but we could increase your self-awareness, which might, create more alignment with your colleagues or reduce frustration. I don't
Mhm.
think anybody would say no to that. I'd be like, yeah, I'll take more self-awareness. Thanks. Right. So while the correlation, the statistical number might not be significant, I think the question is a lot more complicated than that. And I think the general consensus on self-awareness is that it's really important, especially this day and age when we talk about leadership. So great question with, I think, a complicated answer, but I think speaks to how important blind spots are and how much they can
Mhm.
help our leaders with their self-awareness.